Taipei City. It's Taiwan's largest city and most populated, and it's a city I actually really like, but to be totally honest with you, I don't think I could ever live there. And here's why.
I've lived in Taiwan for a number of years now, and I've never even considered living in Taiwan. Well, I have thought about it, but the money, and I think that's what keeps a lot of other people away too, is just the expenses are so high. When I have friends that live in Taipei, when they tell me about what they pay for rent, I just don't get it. It's just so expensive. And it's just a different lifestyle here. It's a different atmosphere. It's a different aesthetic. There's a gleam and a shine on things that you don't get in the rest of the island. The lifestyle is different. People dress different. People behave a little bit differently. It just has a more of an upper class feel to it, I find. And I don't know if it's worth that cost. You know, the rest of the island has a totally different feeling to it. It feels a lot more, I don't know, it's a little bit more run down, I think, but which makes sense because not long ago, Taiwan was set up to be an industrial powerhouse, a manufacturing powerhouse. And you can see that in the architecture and the way that the rest of the island feels versus Taipei. The other thing is the weather. The weather here is pretty miserable most of the time. It rains non-stop. That's one thing I think a lot of people in Taipei complain about, is just the weather's really not that great. On the flip side, it is incredibly green here, which is really cool. I think a lot of the other cities in Taiwan are more gray or brown, or that kind of not so nice to look at colors, but Taipei is really green, which is really cool and actually really pretty. And that's one cool thing about Taipei, is that you do get a surprising amount of hiking and outdoor experiences really close to the city.
To try and understand why people choose to live in a city that's so expensive, it comes with such horrible weather, I asked my friend Lucas, who lives here in Taipei and is also a fellow YouTuber.
Why do I like living in Taipei? I think that's a great question, Prazi. Before I answer, I just want to give a full disclaimer that I have actually, during my 8 years here in Taiwan, only lived in Taipei. I haven't had the honor to check out any of the other cities in detail. And not only have I only lived in Taipei, I've actually only lived along the same street, Roosevelt Road. So when I do refer to living in Taipei, I only refer to living along Roosevelt Road. So I guess that is actually one of the factors for why I'm still living here in Taipei, because I'm familiar with the area and I haven't really had any reason to move. But I think the main reason is that I am from the Swedish forests, from the Swedish countryside, and I'm actually from like the countryside of the Swedish countryside. So moving to Asia and then Taiwan, Taipei was just the biggest change you could possibly imagine, which is also one of the reasons why I really like it here, because it literally feels like I'm living a second life within my own life. And I feel like if I would move down south, no offense, I feel like I would get to a little bit more of the countryside feel to it, which I have nothing against. This how I grew up. But if I want that, I could actually just go back home to Sweden instead. And to go into a little bit more detail, because I have actually had the honor to travel around most parts of Taiwan. And from my first impressions from the different cities, a few things I've noticed is that just Taipei seems to be a little bit more convenient. Like you have the cabs, pretty much every like 20 seconds you will see a cab, and every 30 seconds you will see a 7-Eleven. Now I'm sure that if I would actually live in one of the other cities, I would of course take my scooter pretty much anywhere and not rely on the MRT or the very convenient bus system we have up here in Taipei. But after COVID-19, if my family or friends decide to come back here to visit again, I just feel like it's just a lot more convenient if they are in Taipei. They can travel along the MRT, and it's also very close to the airport, which is very nice. When the world will open up again and we get back to our traveling, it's very nice to just have 1 hour to the airport instead of just having to go back to the HSR and then take another like 1.5 hour down south in order to get back home. And I just feel like basically anything you could possibly want is here in Taipei. For example, you know that I'm a huge tech geek. I have like cameras, computers, fancy lights, microphones, and you name it, which is just literally a couple of bus stops away from where I live here in Taipei. But if I would live down south, it would just be a little bit more difficult trying to actually find these things. You would have to rely a little bit more on online ordering, and I don't know, I just like the big city life here when I'm in Taiwan, and if I do get tired of it, definitely I will consider moving down south, but it's also more likely that I will actually move back to the Swedish countryside instead. I don't know, Prazi, does that answer your question?
That does indeed answer my question, and I think Lucas points out some really interesting things here. There is a certain charm to living in a big city that I felt when I first landed in Taipei, which is where I lived for about a week when I had to do training. Coming straight out of China into Taipei, I was so impressed by the cleanliness and organization of the streets, which I know not many won't agree with, but again, I was coming from China. The city was extremely vertical, with towers and buildings that shoot their way above you in the tiny alleyways and neighborhoods, and it's just one of those cities that kind of reminds me of Coruscant from Star Wars, and by the way, if you're a fan, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. When the neon lights and walls and colors are so overstimulating, it's kind of hard to sort of anticipate when things are happening, like, for example, traffic. But once you get used to it, you kind of start to see the order of things, the green walking paths for pedestrians that separate them from the cars and scooters, and the parks that are set up for green areas so the city doesn't look too gray and run down. It's really hard to describe a city's atmosphere, its quote-unquote vibe. Taipei definitely has a unique one, and when I finished my training and arrived in Taichung a week later, that atmosphere was sorely missed. Getting off the bus, there were stray dogs and dusty roads and buildings that were much further apart and a lot dirtier. Those were just my first impressions of Taichung, so obviously I had a lot more to learn, but I do miss that sort of Taipei feeling. One thing you should know about Taipei is that people here aren't afraid to hide how much money they have. And because of the sizable high-income population of the city, the area around Taipei 101 is pretty flashy, and you'll see loads of expensive cars and designer shops. And in order to prepare for the lavish style the tower often enjoys, I decided to try my hand yet again at tea, although this time expensive fancy tea that I definitely didn't pick.
I don't drink tea. I don't understand tea. My family never drank tea. It's like a posh thing to do in Canada, you know? I guess I'm not gonna get a sponsor from TWG.
Anyways, after bitching and moaning like a spoiled brat, it was time to take the elevator up to Taipei's biggest attraction, Taipei 101.
That elevator is so fast, it doesn't give your ears time to like adjust. I can't hear anything. Especially, I think it's definitely worth it because you don't really get the sense for how high it is. I mean, when you look at it from the ground, you're like, okay, that's tall, but then you come up here and you're like, it's really fucking tall. And the elevator got me here in what, something like 36 seconds, which is amazing. I mean, I hate when shit wastes my time, and that got here in no time. I wish everything that was that quick. Not everything, but elevators, yeah. I think it is actually a little exciting. Like if my sisters came to visit or my mom came to visit or whoever, I would take them up here. Even that's going to be 600. It's a little bit more, but I think it's worth it. It's an experience. It's something unique to Taipei, to Taiwan, really. So I think it's pretty excited. And I'm not easily excited about anything. I know I'm not exactly showing it, but it is pretty cool. I guess what I'm trying to say is Taipei just seems more like a modern city, whereas the rest of the island feels like you're kind of 30 years behind, I guess. And not really, but it does have that kind of atmosphere. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it has a fully fledged, fully built MRT system built, which other parts of Taiwan don't have. I mean, Taichung's trying, but it keeps breaking. It's just not a very good project. It could be the really tall skyscrapers, really big buildings that, you know, Taichung has, just not on the same level as Taipei, that's for sure. I'm happy that I live in Taichung because I can just come up here, you know, hop on the HSR and I'm here in less than an hour, and I can kind of enjoy that upper class life for the time I'm here for the weekend, which is what I'm doing here, you know. Get myself a nice hotel, get myself a nice taxi, go to like nicer restaurants and stuff, and just sort of live that upscale life, I guess, because it is a bit of fun to do that.
Anyways, I think you guys get the point. Taipei has a big Asian city character that you pay a shitload for, and the rest of the island is a little bit more shabby, but it's cheaper. Those are basically my thoughts on Taipei. Do you agree or do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. And remember to subscribe. It really helps out my channel, and just means you won't miss another one of my videos, which come out every week. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can follow me at Prozzy_SR, and I do have a Patreon page where I do cooking videos and talk about life, so if you want to support me there, click on the link in the description below, and I'll see you guys on the next one.